This is the iGo Tour. It's probably one of my favorite bikes, actually, that they make. I just like how it looks. It's got the suspension, it's got the lights, it's got the rack, sort of with the proper blocker for the wheel and everything. And it uses this mid-drive system that they actually innovated. So iGo's been around since about 2005, and they were one of the first sort of center drive systems out there, and they really aim to be affordable. So this bike is like $14.99 in Canada, $100 more than that to ship to the US, and it really offers you, I don't know, a way to leverage this new type of system. And some of the benefits of this are the wheels are a lot easier to manage. You know, if you need to tune it up or take the wheel off and change a flat, that kind of thing, nothing's really different about this bike besides the center part, which can actually be, completely bolted on or bolted off if there is some sort of catastrophic failure. But it's pretty simple. The motor's in here, and it basically powers this front ring and pulls you along. Now, it's not sophisticated enough to know when you're switching gears or whatever. So if you're climbing, and you're putting a lot of strain on the bike and the motor's pulling, and you try to change gears, well, it's gonna transfer that back to your cassette and your chain, and it's gonna mash and kunk kunk kunk, that kind of thing. But if you ride it properly and you wait to shift until you've got a little bit of forward momentum, it works well enough. I'm gonna hit the bike specs on this. Got some fairly standard city type of pedals here. They're metal. The rubber grip's all right. If they get wet, be careful, you could slip off a little bit. But I love that this bike has fenders, front and rear. Fairly standard, but handsome. They look nice. It's got these V brakes or rim brakes, provide good stopping power front and rear. Shimano Alivio cassette back here, controlled by this grip shifter, 8-speed on the left. Little adjustable stem so you can kind of position the handlebars wherever you'd like. This does come in a low step version as well, and I love that they included a water bottle mount here, because you get thirsty when you're riding. In terms of the rack, standard gauge tubing, bolt on, so over time, if you use this a lot, especially because there's the weight of the battery in here, you want to make sure these stay tight and they don't get rattly. But it's nice that they included this bungee adapter here, just because it's going to make it more functional right off the bat. Nice Velo saddle that's sort of padded, pretty comfortable right there. And again, the fact that they have this sort of blocked off, so if you have panniers, they're not gonna, get caught in your wheel or rub against the tire. These are 700C tires, so that like 29 size, fairly, not like hybrid, kind of slick in the middle with a little bit of grip. And a suspension fork, which I love, because if you're going over potholes or something, you get a little bit of cush. And this actually has lockout, so you can swivel that, it turns red, it's locked out. That's great. And of course, the lights. So this actually aims down or up, depending on what you need. It's LED. It's mounted to the fork, so it's not going to rattle around a whole lot. And then there's the rear LED light. So that's awesome. So in terms of the drive specs on these, the motor itself is about 250 watts, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but again, it leverages those rear cogs. And so it can actually climb pretty well, or get you up to that about 20 miles per hour if you're using like a higher gear and you're on the flats or whatever. This isn't like the fastest, the strongest bike, but you really benefit from the way that it's set up. And again, if you shift right, it can work pretty well. The battery pack here is 36 volt, 10 amp hours. It's fairly standard. It's removable, so you could charge this in the office. Here's the key. The key comes out, when you activate it. You don't need to leave that in, which is great. Some bikes, it rattles around, which is annoying. Here's the charging port. Again, fairly nice design. Lithium-ion batteries that are going to last a long time and work pretty well for you. Some of that weight, it's in the rear, it's high up. That's not ideal, but other bikes like this that have a similar design, a lot of them have like a hub motor, and everything's in the rear. At least on this one, some of the weight's low and center right there. So yeah, it's a decent setup. I'm gonna hop on and give you a demo. Basically, you turn the display on with this button. You can activate the lights at any time, and then you pick one of the levels of assist, and that's gonna determine how much power the motor gives you. So low, medium, or high. At any time, you can use the throttle to basically like instantly give you that amount of power. It does use like a cadence sensor here with only, 5 sensors, so it's a little bit more sluggish. It takes a second to kick in, and then when you stop pedaling, it still keeps going for a while, which I'll show. But again, if you use the brake levers, you can instantly cut that off because they're wired in. There's a little wire to tell it to stop. So it's a little riding tip for you. There we go. We're on rough terrain here. You can hear the fenders kind of banging around a little bit. Could probably tighten those, but again, this is a little bit of a value bike in terms of price, and the components all work, but the rack and all that, just keep that in mind. You might want to keep an eye on it so it doesn't get loose. Well, there you go. That's the iGo Tour electric bike. For the full specs and more info, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com.